In today's video, we are making a 6 pieces gore skirt which you can easily convert to 8 pieces gore skirt. Let's get into it. We will start by tracing our basic skirt block pattern onto a fresh sheet of paper. I have a detailed video on how to create a basic skirt pattern. I will link it up here in the card. I'll also link it in the description box below. I'll start with the back part of the skirt. So I'll start by tracing the whole skirt onto a fresh sheet of paper, just like so. Be sure to trace the dart and everything. So this is the pattern all traced onto a fresh sheet of paper. Since the skirts have 2 darts, we are going to close one of the darts, then add the excess to the other dart. So we are going to measure the dart intake closer to the side seam, then add the dart intake to the other dart, just like so. So in this case, when I measure the dart, I have 0.75. So I'll divide it equally, then place it on both sides of the dart closer to the center back line, just like so. So now this dart is no longer needed as we've added it to the first dart. Now join the points, that's the dart intake you've added to the first dart, to the tip of the dart to complete the dart, just like so. So I'm just using the curved side of my ruler just to create a little shape at the waist when I sew the seam, so that I'll have a little bit of shaping to the seam line of the skirt. You can just use the straight side of your ruler to join the dart legs, but I'm just using the curved side just to create that nice curve from the waist to the hem when I sew the pieces together. Now this is our dart. I want to increase the length of the skirt, so from the waist I'll measure the desired length I want. So in this case, I want the length of the skirt to be 25 inches. So I'll increase the skirt length of this basic skirt to 25 inches. Then square a line to create a new hem line for the skirt, just like so. Now we need to create the gore effect. So I will measure from the center back line to the tip of the dart, then place the same measurement on the hem to draw a straight line. So you can just place that measurement on different places to get a straight line down from the tip of the dart to the hem of the skirt, just like so. So after drawing the line, we will have the center back piece part, then we have the side back piece side. So you can go ahead and now cut out your pattern so that we move to the next step. Cut the dart intake of the first dart to take out the dart, just like so. After cutting your 2 pieces, this is what you will have. Now we are going to create the gore effect. There are different ways you can create the pieces. For the back, I'm going to draft it on fold. Then I'll use a different method to create the front so that you know 2 methods you can use to create the same thing. Take a fresh sheet of paper and fold it in half, just like so. The folded paper should be enough to accommodate the fullness you'll be adding to the hem of the skirt. Take the center back piece of your skirt, then place it, making sure to match the center back line to the folded edge of the paper, just like so. Now trace the pattern piece onto the fresh sheet of paper, just like so. So after tracing, this is what we have. Now we are going to add the fullness at the hem to create the gored effect. So at the hem side, measure out the amount of fullness you need. So in this case, I'm just adding 2 inches fullness at the hem. So I'll measure from the hem line out 2 inches, then mark like so. Then I'll join this mark back to the hip line of the skirt to create the flare at the hem, just like so. Because of the fullness we've added, the side is going to be longer than the center. So we will go up from the hem 1/8 of an inch. Then we will join it back to the hem of the skirt with a shallow curve to create a nice hem, just like so. Now our center back piece is ready. Go ahead and add all the necessary seam allowance you will need. So in this case, I'm adding 1 inch hem allowance at the hem side, then I'll add ½ inch all around to be able to join the pieces back together. Then go ahead and cut out your pattern whilst it's still on fold. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So after cutting, this is what you have. Be sure to label your pattern with the pattern name and cutting instructions. Now let's move to the side back panel. Start by tracing the side back piece onto a fresh sheet of paper, just like so. Now we are going to add the flare or the fullness at the hem. So extend your hem line out, then measure out 2 inches. That's the amount of fullness you want for your skirt. So in this case, I'm adding 2 inches fullness. So I'll measure out on the hem line 2 inches. I'll do the same at the other side of the piece. Then join it to the hip of the skirt to create the flare at the hem, just like so. Now to get a nice hem, I'll go up from the hem 0.125 inches, then join it back to the hem to create a nice curve at the hem. I'll repeat the same process at the other side too. The side back panel is also ready. Go ahead and add all the necessary seam allowance you will need, then cut out your pattern. So in this case, I'm adding 1 inch hem allowance, then I'll add ½ inch all around the pattern to be able to join it to the other pieces. Be sure to label the pattern with the pattern name and cutting instructions.
Yeah, you switch things up, now you seem brand new to me. But was that even for? Was you playing your games? Was you really bored? No. I really should've known. Be with that and right till we hit a red light. Didn't see the signs. Oh, after all that time, it's a sit for us. You don't wanna try. Thought your love was real, but it's never was. No, you can't decide.
Since we have a bit of lines now, I'm going to use a permanent marker to draw the permanent lines we will need. So I'll use a red pen to indicate the seam allowance lines. Then I'll use a blue pen to show the seam lines. Our side back panel is also ready. Go ahead and cut out your pattern. So this is the side back panel and this is the center back panel. So these are the two panels for the back. So we have the center back panel, then we have the side back panel. Let's work on the front panels to get a complete skirt. So for the front piece, start by tracing your basic skirt pattern onto a fresh sheet of paper. So I went ahead and traced the pattern onto a fresh sheet of paper. Then I added the length I want. So in this case, the length I want for the skirt is 25 inches. So I extended the original skirt length to 25 inches on the new pattern paper. Now, since this is a 2-dart skirt, I'm going to close one of the darts by adding the dart intake to the other dart to have only one dart on the skirt. So I will measure the dart intake on the first dart closer to the side seam, so which in this case 0.5 inches. So I will divide this dart equally and place it on both sides of the first dart. That's the dart closer to the center front line. Connect these two marks to the dart points to create the new dart legs, just like so. Now square a line from the dart point to the hem of the skirt to use to create the panels we need. So to get a straight line, I measured from the center front line to the dart point. Then I place the same measurement on the hem and then on different points to get a straight line down. So now we have two separate pieces. We have the center front part and then we have the side front part. Now go ahead and cut out your pattern. After cutting, you have something like this. So you have the center front piece, then you have the side front piece. Now take a fresh sheet of paper, then place one of the panels on it, then trace it. So in this case, I'm starting with the center front piece. So I'll go ahead and trace the whole pattern onto the fresh sheet of paper. After tracing, this is what I have. Since this is the center front panel, we are not going to add any fullness at the center front or on the center front line, but rather we only add it at the side of the center front panel. This is because the center front will be cut on full. Now, to create the gore effect, we are going to add some fullness at the hem of the skirt. So I'll go ahead and measure the amount of fullness I want in the skirt. So in this case, I want to use 2 inches. So from the hem, I'll measure out 2 inches just like so. Then I'll extend the line to create the new hem line. Then I'll join the hem back to the hip of the skirt to create the gore effect just like so. Just like we did for the back, I'll go up from the hem line 0.125 inches. Then I'll join it back to the hem with a shallow curve, just like so. Since this is the center front panel, I'm not going to add any fullness at the center front part of the panel. So I'll just go ahead and then use my marker to deepen the lines to show the permanent lines we need. So we'll be cutting this piece on fold. So go ahead and write the cutting instructions you will need for the pattern. Then go ahead and add all the necessary seam allowance you will need. So in this case, I'm adding 1 inch hem allowance to the hem of the skirt. Then I'll add ½ inch all around to be able to join this piece to the other pieces. I'm using a red marker to indicate the seam allowance lines. Our center front panel is also ready. Go ahead and cut out your pattern. Now let's move to the side panel of the front. Take a fresh sheet of paper and trace the whole side panel onto the fresh sheet of paper. Now to add the fullness at the hem of the skirt, extend the hem line past the hem of the skirt just like so. Then measure the amount of fullness you want to add. So in this case, I'm adding 2 inches to the side of the panel. So I'll measure and mark 2 inches just like so. Then I'll join it to the hip of the skirt to create the gore effect just like so. Please subscribe to be part of this amazing family. Thank you. Then I'll go up by 0.125, then join it back to the hem to create the new hem line just like so. I'll repeat the same process at the other side of the piece to add the fullness and then to shape the hem line. The side panel is also ready. Go ahead and add all the necessary seam allowance you will need. So in this case, I'm adding ½ inch seam allowance all around the pattern. Then I'll add 1 inch hem allowance to the bottom of the skirt. Don't forget to label all the panels with the pattern name and cutting instructions. So to prevent me from confusing the panels, I went ahead and added a notch on the hip line so that when I'm joining this to the other pieces, I'll know which parts to join to which part. So the one notch will be joined to the front part of the skirt and the two notches will be joined to the back piece of the skirt. So these are the two panels for the front. We have the center front panel, then we have the side front panel. So I'll make sure to give the same notch to the center front piece so that when I'm joining it, I'll be able to match the pieces. Here are all the panels for our gold skirt. So we have the center front panel, side front panel, then we have the side back panel, then we have the center back panel. Thank you so much for watching to this stage. Was this video helpful? If it was, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap on the bell notification so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Share so that others can also find the video. Until next time, bye bye.